Right, now we'll move on to the third and final presentation in this, the middle session of today's trio of webinars. The next presentation is from HSBC. Our speakers are Nancy Sloan of HSBC, Joshua Serene, also of HSBC, and Ben Dobney of In Moment Research. The title of the presentation is, oh, beg pardon, forgot Monique Hillel. I shouldn't forget Monique, my apologies. The title of the presentation today is Helping Customers Thrive. The Global Customer Strategy and Insight team at HSBC developed an innovative approach to understanding customers and place customer feedback at the heart of decision making. By collecting unstructured data and analysing it using powerful text analytics to provide and proactively deliver rich customer insight, the Insight team has been able to shift the focus of senior management to a customer-first focus. Most of us will be very familiar with the challenge this poses of shifting the dial for the exec team. Tune in to hear how the goal was achieved. I'm now going to hand over to Josh, who will take us through the presentation. Josh, over to you.
Thank you, Tom. And firstly, a huge thank you for everyone at Aura for the nomination. We are very proud and excited to be here today. By introduction, my name is Josh Serene, and today with my colleagues Monique, Nancy, and Ben from our Merit CX partner, we're going to show you how we've put insight at the heart of decision-making at HSBC. So many of you would have had experience of bringing about large-scale changes within organizations, and it is hard. Changing not just how we do research, but also bringing about the cultural and structural changes associated with that change is even harder. With this project, it has really forced us to think differently, and we believe that we are changing things for the better of HSBC and our customers. And what we want to do now is just bring you on that journey with us. So if we're able to turn to the next page, I really just wanted to share how this all started. And it started with a single brief. And that brief was from senior management to give us a consistent metric across our different business units. And the rationale behind that brief was really when we're reporting our customer experience scores externally, we've got different business areas using different scores, and it becomes very convoluted and complicated to explain. So that was the brief we were given, but we wanted to challenge that for two key reasons. One is that irrespective of the metric that we use, the metric itself won't move if we don't have the right systems and processes in place to bring about change off the back of the insight. And secondly, we also wanted to use this as an opportunity to challenge and change our existing survey architecture. As you can see on this slide here on the left, what we had until a couple of years ago was really just two components: a strategic benchmarking approach so we can understand how well we compare against our peers, and also some channel satisfaction surveys. So we had realistically some really limited understanding across the full relationship. And this siloed approach, because we had quite a few missing gaps, meant it was very difficult for us to join the dots between different programs and really understand the impact that our customer experience was having. The net impact of all of this was that we weren't necessarily driving the strategic change that we wanted to do. And we also fell into a scenario whereby if the score movements were good, everybody was happy. And if the score movements had started to decline, then it was the methodology. And that was something that we were very keen to move away from, and we really wanted to instigate that change. And now I'm going to hand over to Nancy, who's going to talk about just how we started to bring about that change.
Thanks, Josh. So yes, it was really with these problems in mind that our journey towards adopting NPS began, as we look towards focusing our efforts on some of the objectives of the Net Promoter System when developing our own approach to understanding our own customers. So the first objective that we looked at was really that focus on developing a consistent and deep and actionable understanding of our customers' experiences. So that was really focusing on the various stages of being a customer, and is an aspect that I'll go into describing in more detail shortly. The second objective that we looked to was empowering people across the whole organisation at different levels. So in doing this, it meant introducing new operating fixes to fix those customer issues whilst they were still in the moment, and identifying the root causes of these issues. Again, something I'll go into in more detail shortly. The third objective was really to prioritise those journeys and interactions that did matter most to our customers, and in turn deliver the most value to the business overall. But we also looked to the system to really improve our ways of working overall and create that cultural shift to customer centricity across the entire organisation. And finally, the final objective was really creating that cycle of continuous improvement. So again, focusing on customer journeys as that primary focus really for driving that change amongst our customers. So if we move on, it was with these objectives of NPS in mind, and the first objective in particular that we looked towards, which was really developing that consistent, deep and actionable understanding of our customers that led us to completely redesign the survey infrastructure that we were using. So this redesign included introducing 4 types of surveys to help us develop that globally aligned system that covers all elements of our customers' relationship with us. So this, for example, included introducing comparisons to our competitors and improvements on that, but also measuring those key journeys that I've described and the interactions as part of those. So it's with this idea in mind that we were starting to create some more relevant and actionable insight that actually flowed through to the right parts of the organisation to act upon. And it's a result of this redevelopment overall that now means that our customers, that we're gathering more feedback on our customers, more regular feedback, and that we're able to trigger surveys both off of interactions and non-trigger based surveys. And we're therefore able to link that feedback to our customer records for further analysis. And it's in doing so that we've switched the focus of our surveys from, as Josh mentioned, that metric-driven centred approach to something that's more semi-structured now and is more of a respondent level led survey structure. So we're now capturing that unstructured data through verbatim feedback and using text analytics to further analyse this and actually produce some really rich insight off the back of it, rather than that old prescriptive method that we'd been following previously. So this leads me on to the next part, which is how we've taken the redesign of our survey architecture one step further, essentially, by designing our questionnaires to support closed loop feedback. And it's by working together closely with our partners at Maritz CX that we've been able to deliver systems that now allow our frontline staff to investigate both local issues and identify those issues, but also identify and escalate more of the systemic issues that matter to the bank. So by introducing this, we've been able to address that real issue of a lack of ownership that we've described and a lack of accountability within the bank across certain journeys. And instead, we've established far greater accountability and ownership for some of these customer issues. And in doing so, we've also created a route for that insight to be delivered to the most relevant stakeholders, essentially, and so they can drive that change internally. We've also introduced, for example, internal decision-making forums that now consider the impact of initiatives that are being proposed and the impact they may have in driving NPS when making investment decisions across the bank.
So one of the previous, limitations of our survey architecture historically was that we were too reliant, I'd say, on survey data. It was just one side of the coin. And as we know, there is a wealth of data within organizations, and we're really missing a lot of that. So what we want to do is really work with our data analytics team to fuse the survey findings from our strategic survey, which is our benchmarking survey, our own internal relationship survey that we were able to tie back to our CRM system, and also some additional internal data to really fuse that together and create an economic model. And that economic model has been really valuable to us because it enabled us to do 2 things really. One is that it enabled us to put a dollar value behind some of the NPS scores. So we could better understand, I guess, the relative value of promoters, passives and detractors, and prove some of the economics around, promoters buying more, staying longer and referring more. The second element that this also gave us is it gave us something called, what we call internally, a roadmap to leadership. And this was effectively a pathway of the key improvements that we need to make based on what matters most to customers. And with that roadmap to leadership, we're able to prioritize the things that are going to have the biggest impact in driving our NPS scores. So what that was really important for us is that we started to make that transition to actually informing strategy and having that conversation with the business about what they needed to do in order to improve the scores and actually have the science to kind of back that up. The impact of this has been that now the NPS scores are actually a key fundamental part of some of the funding and prioritization decisions within the organization. So within our order book, things are prioritized based on their ability to impact the NPS scores, which is a great achievement for us. I think some of the other unintended consequences of that have been that it's led to a really positive change in perception of us as a team. We're seen far more as business partners. I think we're no longer seen as people that provide, I guess, rear view mirror and retrospective looking data. It's far more forward looking, forensic and commercial. And it also showed how we're starting to become joined up with some of our other data teams in the organization. On this slide here, you can see some of that, I guess, bringing that financial value to life a little bit. So on the left, you can see some of the incremental revenue uplifts that we can get through some of our roadmap to leadership if we focus on some of these areas and start to see some of the score improvements that we're looking to see. But I think probably one of the most important things of the roadmap to leadership is actually this bit on the right. And it's actually helped us unearth some hidden economies. So we know through looking at solely the survey data that those highly emotive journeys have a really big impact on NPS scores. I mean, fraud, as you can see here, is a great example. A customer may have a fraudulent issue. It's highly emotive. People are worried about their monies, and therefore it's a really key moment of truth. What we're able to find from the roadmap to leadership is that they were probably more high volume, medium impact interactions, such as relating to payments, that although their impact on NPS was lower, the fact that they were so systematic and impacted so many people really helped us to prioritize not just the things that are high impact, low frequency, but also get that right balance of including things that I guess are medium impact and high frequency. And on that subject of impact, I'm just going to hand over to Nancy, who's going to talk more about some of the other impacts we've had from the NPS system.
Thanks. Yeah, no, so this slide really shows the impact of the programme and how it's translating globally and how it's growing across the entire organisation. So on the right of this slide, we've highlighted some of the fundamental improvements and successes that the UK team has seen as an example. And we're again reminded of the economic value of NPS leadership, but also how some of the improvements to advocacy have started translating internally through this 11-point increase in customer onboarding NPS this year, but also externally. So this 7-point increase in ranking. So that's for the UK CMA overall service. And we're also seeing that in addition to this, that our work translates into savings that have been identified for the UK business. So a 1.3 million saving through those improvements that we've been making to customer payments journeys in particular. If we look to the left here, it's more of a global view of what we're seeing. So the impact that stretches further than the UK. And we're seeing that 10 Scrum teams have been set up as an example to focus on that continuous improvement of journeys in particular. And there are many others that are following globally. The programme has also prompted collaboration across the world with 100 core colleagues really that are working on embedding NPS globally. And finally, we've seen a huge increase in the volume of customer feedback that we're receiving, with more than 1.5 million customers responding globally. And an increase in those efforts that I've outlined, you know, responding to customers directly. So more than 15,000 customers have been responded to, and we've learnt many lessons off the back of that. So moving on to the next slide, this is really a summary of how far we've come in our NPS journey to date and where we're looking towards in the future. And it was really following that UK pilot of the programme that we started to implement the programme globally at scale. And we're now working towards really creating that consistent approach that aligns across the whole of the organisation. So this slide obviously highlights the economic value of NPS, of course, but also some of the ongoing activity outside of this. So it really shows that it was really together with our team, our partners at Maritz, and their support and guidance that's been really integral to the process and our journey. And with their support, we've launched platform reporting across all of our relationship, journey, and interaction surveys. And just as an example, our interaction surveys have now been launched across 22 different markets globally.
So this is the final slide we're going to talk you through today, and this is really just a couple of reflections that we just really wanted to call out. So we talked at the beginning about how we evolved our survey architecture. We've moved away from this, I guess, siloed and limited view to really a 360 view of the customer experience. And one of the things that Nancy talked before was about having accountability to key stakeholders. And what we did as part of this process is also map certain questions to key stakeholders, so everyone is accountable and there is that overt recognition and responsibility. One of the things we didn't necessarily talk about was how we'd evolved some of those interaction surveys. And as part of this process, we actually reduced the question set down from 9 questions to 3 questions. And that actually improved not just the customer experience for customers, but also the quality of our insight. And we were unable to do that for really 2 reasons. One, we did it through data enrichment. So we only asked questions that we didn't already have the answers to. And secondly, we were far more reliant on making better use of the verbatim comments and not asking questions that we thought customers wanted to speak about. The third element here that we wanted to talk about was around reporting. We covered the roadmap to leadership in quite a bit of detail, but it's worth saying that this was really key for us in bringing about that strategic change and focusing on really what matters most to customers. That element of the roadmap to leadership was innovative for us as an organization, but it wasn't the only area of innovation that we saw. We also started to update some of the technology in our tech stack to help improve the way we analyze some of our surveys. So from a digital surveys perspective, we actually activated our Adobe Analytics tool. So we're able to better analyze our digital surveys with some of the digital customer behavior that's associated with that. The other area that we started to was pilot some of the way we deploy our surveys, particularly using the Salesforce platform. And that enabled us to do 2 things. One, we were able to deploy surveys quicker, which meant that we got a richer quality insight because it happened far sooner after the interaction. But also it gave us the opportunity to do closed loop feedback and service recovery far quicker than we had done previously. The other positive of this is that by deploying it through an automated platform like Salesforce, we were able to take away some of the manual internal resource associated with generating email addresses, which meant that some of our team members could be utilized to, I guess, better activities. But we are not, as in HSBC, are not the only area that's done some innovation. So I'm just going to hand over to Ben, who's going to talk about how we're starting to do some more innovation from a Maritz perspective.
Thank you, Josh. Something that we are extremely keen to do when we work with HSBC is to really enable them to leverage the insights that are within the really rich data that we get back, so that we are finding bits of information and finding things which are immediately actionable that we may not otherwise have thought was there. Really key to doing that, particularly at the moment, is not only some of the developments that we have on our platform, but creating tools in Tableau that enable us to deliver reports and dashboards to HSBC that enable us to really dig into the data and find insights and findings that would just be lost otherwise. The data is so rich, particularly the strategic NPS side, that although we deliver some static reporting, particularly focused on areas which are really key to HSBC, by developing out additional tools using Tableau and interactives, we can create ways for both for us and for HSBC to dig into the data and find things which are immediately actionable and really help to drive some of those key findings, those key savings.
Thank you, Ben. I'd say just the final few points on this slide is that the work we are doing hasn't gone unnoticed internally. So we're now starting to have conversations with some of our other business units outside of the retail bank to think about how we can come up with a consistent and common approach to what we have done here. And also we're starting to work with our employee insights team so we can start to have an employee NPS, so we can start to really fuse some of the customer data and the employee data and really do some good insight analysis there. The final point that I just wanted to call out is around ways of working. As part of this project, we've really embraced agile ways of working. As a team, we've worked across different markets, different teams, obviously in light of COVID, a lot of that remotely, and having to do this at pace. I'd say that it was definitely a learning curve, but we wouldn't have progressed as quickly as we have done if we didn't work in this way. We also started to use, I guess, platform management tools like Monday.com, which has really helped us to, I guess, manage the rollout across the markets in a far more structured and systematic way. So that is all that we want to share with you today. We hope you enjoyed our presentation and thank you for listening.
Fantastic. That's really, really interesting. Thank you to Nancy, Joshua, Monique, and Ben for super presentation. Really enjoyed that. Okay, so we're now going to move quickly on to question time. So any further questions, pop them into the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. The first question today is from